Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, back from Los Angeles, California. Took the family on a vacation, went to Universal Studios, went to see the Hollywood sign, did a whole bunch of stuff out there. Universal was great. Got to see the Super Mario exhibit. That was really cool. Got myself an awesome little one-up mushroom that I've been drinking out of. My wife's been picking on me, saying, "Is that the only thing you're ever going to drink out of again?" That's the plan. I'd like to just drink out of a one-up everywhere I go. It's pretty cool because I hold it to it. It's like a giant martini glass and just standing there drinking out of this thing. But enough about my one-up mushrooms. We're here for Warhammer 40K. And in this video, I wanted to let you guys know, I'm back from California. That's why there's been kind of a little bit of a drought there. I took my recording equipment with me to try to record while I was down there. Thought I was going to be able to. The connection, the Wi-Fi, the lighting, everything was really, really off. I needed more stuff than I thought, and it just was not able to happen. But I had some great conversations with people, a lot of interaction on the channel, so I wanted to start some topics of conversation moving forward and what we've seen and what we can look forward to with 40K in the near future. Now, a lot of focus has been on Necrons, and that is going to be some of the focus with this video for my cronies today. Especially considering I'm going to be going to a GT. My buddy Scott in Columbus is going to be hosting a grand tournament the end of July. And over the course of the time of the video, I'll drop more details and more names on that, the name for the event and everything like that. Hopefully you can see some of you guys out there. Scott's a good buddy of mine, so I know it's going to be a great event. And I will be taking Necrons. What I'm taking, I'm not 100% sure yet, as some of the stuff that we'd seen come up recently. That's some of the conversations I've had with people. What do we do against the current meta? What do we do in this current game? And what damage do we need to bring? And what units? What this, what that? All the questions. So that's kind of one of the things I want to do is I want to start some of the topic of those conversations to see what we feel, what we think about some of the stuff with it, and also kind of give some food for thought on what those topics mean and what I see and what I'm looking at right now as someone who's played competitive 40K for a very, very, very long time. Granted, yes, I'm a father. I have a full-time job, so I can't go to as many tournaments as I would like to. I have other responsibilities. But whenever I'm playing 40K, I always have a competitive mindset in it. So hopefully some of the things that I'm thinking about with the lists and list concepts can resonate for someone else out there. And if nothing else, I love the conversations we've been having. A lot of great information, a lot of great feedback, a lot of different concepts and theories of thinkings that have made me reconsider things and change up things with my lists and my army in general. So that's some of the stuff that I want to go over and talk about and see what I'm looking at and thinking. And maybe this might help someone. Maybe someone else will put in a comment, and then we can all talk about that and figure out that together and help kind of curve the meta and get our Necron win rate up. I didn't like where I saw it today. It was relatively low. I thought I saw something in like the 30, 38%. Not what I want to see. So time to see that increase. So first things first, wouldn't be a YouTube channel if I didn't say, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell for notifications to get notified on more videos such as this one. Next Monday, me and Lane will be setting up to play a game of Warhammer, get some of the tactical cards involved, and really start playing the competitive side of 40K. And he's got a real interesting list he's been kind of talking to me about a little bit. I won't spoil anything for that, but definitely interesting design going forward. I will be playing Necrons most likely. I do plan on getting Grey Knights here on the channel because even though they have not as impressive of a win rate, I think they have a lot of good mission win that needs to be tapped into. And again, that's with some of the data that we've seen so far, what I want to talk about a little more. So we got those games coming up. More to talk about going through the Necron Codex in detail. I want to talk about Mr. Canoptic Reanimator. The Reanimator is a choice that I know a lot of people are looking at it going, oh, it's an auto-include, oh, but this, but when it gets destroyed, there's a lot around the Reanimator that's a very, very unique and cool model, and its ability is very unique, and how it plays is very unique. So with it gives a very strong ability, but at the same time, there's a lot of things in the game that can bring it down regardless of where it's positioned. So how and what do we think about with that? And those are some things I'm going to cover and touch on based on real quick here, just so we can start some conversations so that when I have the time to go into the major videos on these concepts, we can pull all the data together and I can bring something a little more comprehensive. Because honestly, I've been saying it for a long time, and I think Games Workshop kind of gets it. The best way to test this game is to bring it to the community. The community is going to drill it, nitpick, and pull every little detail out of it. And the community is going to help build a better game. So looking at the Necrons, it's time for us to build a better list. And here are the things that I'm thinking about that I want to start those conversations with. So number one, I've said a couple of times, the data we've seen. We've seen some data from some tournaments recently, some GTs. And right now we see Eldar and Imperial Knights at the top of the list. So what does that mean? Does that mean that they're broken? Does that mean that they're busted? Does that mean that they can't be beat? Well, maybe a little yes, maybe a little no. Right now, I don't think the data is significant enough. We have a very small pool of data. And initially going into the beginning of this edition, a lot of us did not know what was necessarily going to be good, what was going to be great, and what was going to be powerful. And a meta has not been shaped. Now we see the strength of Imperial Knights, the strength of Eldar and the Eldar Wraith Knights, and how powerful the towering mechanic really is in the game. It's in some ways like Imperial Knights have artillery on everything with how much they can see. It's just where true model line of sight. I feel like some of the tournaments I'm looking at with some of the in the area, there is still a possibility of being able to hide infantry and smaller models behind walls on the first floor ruins. But if that knight gets close enough, it's still going to be able to see over and down. And if it can catch that model, it's going to be able to shoot at it. So the towering mechanic is very strong. Personally, I hope that maybe in the near future, we see something, and I think this would be an easy fix, is that the towering true line of sight only can be used or is effective or put into effect if you are within 12 inches of that terrain feature. I think that would let Imperial Knights still have a very, very strong hit with towering mechanic, but not dominating the game in such a way that where if you lose the roll off to go first, there is a possibility you could lose the game with the build you've taken. It also is going to slate a lot of armies to be forced to take builds specifically to handle Imperial Knights, because any other option, any other route they go behind, an Imperial Knight army would be able to pick them up and take them off the table before they can do work. So I do think that hopefully when we see an FAQ, maybe there'll be a tweak into that right now, but we can't look at that. If we're going to play it competitively right now, we got to look at what it is. So what it is, the Imperial Knights and the Wraith Knights can see correctly over things and can see quite a lot of units. And that's something we have to take into factor for it. And that's going to be going into the talk about what I feel with the Canoptic Reanimator going into this. So, number one, the data is very skewed towards these armies because I think a lot of us weren't prepared for it. We may have had one or two options in our army that could have done damage to the Imperial Knights and be threatening. And because of the Imperial Knights' towering sight, they're able to pick those things up and take them off the table before they're able to start doing work, simply by just going first. So how do we get around this? How do we prevent this? And when we can't do that, so we need to have range weapons that can counter it. And that's one thing I'm looking into with Necrons, which I've seen a lot of people looking into as well, heavy destroyers. Heavy destroyers pack the flat 6 damage. High strength, they're wounding knights on 3s, they're able to do the AP, and they're able to do damage. And some will say, well, yes, until the knight player pops ion shields. And that's where our secondary weapons come into. I'm running 3 stalkers. Now, I feel that the Doomstalker is cheaper. It's a unit that in the Wraith Knight matchup, I can reserve them and bring them on outside of 24 and shoot downfield and protect them. The heavy destroyers going into the Imperial Knight matchup, though, and the Doomstalkers as well. The Doomstalkers, I'm hoping to be a little bit of the bait. where I go, I'm targeting with this. Do you want to rotate ion shields? And if the Imperial Knight player does not rotate the ion shields and I hit them, they're going to start to get to a point where they've gone so deep into the turn that they're not even sure if it's worth it to pop the ion shields because of the damage I've done. Using the Doomstalkers to start forcing the Imperial Knight player to make decisions on that ion shield can at least help me to control and dictate when, where, and how the Locust Destroyers then hit. I know a lot of people are running Doomsday Arcs, 2 of those, as opposed to the Doomstalker. I still feel like that's the same kind of territory and column with it, is use the Doomstalker first to go, I target that one. Because although Doomstalker is a good, or the Doomsday Arc does a good amount of damage, we want to bait out that 4-up invuln, because as soon as that 4-up invuln pops, all the heavies can go the other direction. Most people are going to have the Sovereign enhancement, so you'll be able to hit on 2s. You have lethal on 6s. Yes, it's only 1 shot a piece, but that's to me the best option I can see right now to go into the Knights. They're a smaller model, with the Locust model being able to actually potentially hide behind some walls. And that's what I'm seeing initially as the first possibility to handle some of the Imperial Knights. The next thing that I'm looking at is the Canoptic Reanimator. So now we go into this whole towering effect of where the Canoptic Reanimator stands. It's taller. There's no building this thing's ever going to be able to hide behind. And Imperial Knight player is just going to look at it and take it out on turn 1. And I actually am okay with that. And this is how I'm feeling right now. And this is one thing that's kind of a talking point with the Reanimator is because the Reanimator is 95 points. His ability is so strong and so good that it's almost like you can't not have him in the list. If your opponent doesn't respect it and starts shooting at other things for 1 command point or a resurrection or whatever things may be in effect in play in this, you can nullify so many shooting attacks with him. Now, a Knight player, and we can't hope our opponent is going to make that type of mistake. So we have to assume that the Reanimator is going to be something that's going to get hit and going to get killed and going to get removed. At least with the 3-up save, the toughness 6, and the 4-up feel no pain, I feel like the Reanimator at least gives its ability to draw respect out of some weapons. So that draws the respect out of some of the weapons. So the Reanimator gets dropped, Reanimator gets taken out, and it helps us buy that 1 turn out of it. It's still a shooting gallery. It's still a shooting gallery, and it's going to come down to what your dice can do when you start throwing them in there. And that's what I look at the Doomstalkers for, is the 4-up invuln. Yes, I know the Doomsday Arc has a 4-up invuln as well, but the 3 Doomstalker come in at only 325 points, and I like their cost with the another extra big body with a spider to give me a 6-up feel no pain, to try to wade through some of that shooting. Because at the same time, while the Doomstalker's never going to hide from the Knight, ever, the Knight's never going to hide from the Doomstalker. And so I'm always going to have that shots on there. Granted, the 3 damage is not that threatening to a Knight, but you know what it is kind of threatening to? Those Armigers. And that makes it threatening to the Knights because they don't want something that's going to threaten the Armigers and be able to move out and start picking them off. The 5-up Overwatch, as the Armigers start moving across the field, could hit and hurt them and do a little bit of extra damage, or put the finishing touches on an Armiger that's already been beat up if it tries to land within 24 inches to make effect of some range guns, or it may not even be able to make it outside of 24 inches just by terrain layouts and setup, because now the Armiger and the Doomstalker have to respect normal terrain rules since they don't have towering. The last piece that I'm looking at, and you're going to see going into my list, is Destroyers as they are. Regular Locust Destroyers. 6 for 180 points. They have lethal hits on their guns, and you put a Locust Lord with them, they're looking at 5-ups on those lethal hits. That I feel like is good. I feel like their gun is at a good solid place where at least it can force through some 2 damage hits onto some bigger targets, and it's enough volume of fire that's reliable to go into smaller units that have high damage, things like Custodes, Space Marines, and stuff like that. So I think Locust Destroyers might have a home right now with the Locust Lord. How many, I'm not 100% sure about, but I do like them. Some of the issues I'm looking at and running into is, yes, placing the models is difficult because of their flying bases that they're on. So hiding them is going to be kind of difficult into the knight matchup. It means the knights can hit them. Okay, if they're hitting my locust, you're not hitting my heavies. And the longer that the heavies can run, the more damage the heavies can do. But this comes back into now, full circle back into, what about the reanimator? In my list, I'm okay with losing the reanimator on turn 1. And you might say, okay, well, if you're okay with losing the reanimator on turn 1, why not drop it for more units? The reason is I feel like it is a giant flag and a bullseye where you have to hit the reanimator. You have to respect it. You have to take the reanimator out before you start making moves into the rest of the Necron list and the rest of the Necron army. So for us, as long as we can be prepared to go, okay, what is my game? Where does my game go after the reanimator dies? Do I still have the resilience? Can I still play these things? Can I do X, Y, and Z? Then I think we're in a good place. Does that mean you take 2 reanimators? Maybe. If you need that reanimator, at least for that early turn, that might be a point of taking 2 reanimators. And at 95 points, that isn't bad. Really, they're not that bad. Especially with things like Xeris in the game right now. Being able to take Xeris gives you that extra protection with your warriors. Now, all those same units, though, with the warriors and some of the point investments with reanimators, is going to be tough right now with the knight meta because of the fact that the knights do, I mean, a knight charges into a squad of warriors and pops tank shock and then swings and then stomps, I should say, with stompy feet. That warrior brick is gone. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that a lot of things can't really survive the damage that the knights are able to put out there. So we just need to hit them and hit them harder. And heavy destroyers are kind of one of the best options, with the Sovereign being able to give you +1 to hit, so you're hitting on 2s. The lethal hits on 6s. I don't think it's worth putting a Locust Lord in there, just because then that's just going to draw the bullseye on kill this squad now faster. Where the Locust Lord, at least in the 6-man, with a Resurrection Orb, gives you the possibility of, if they don't respect them enough, brings them back, and you get the crits on 5 to be able to force some damage through. Again, this is not the damage that's going to remove the big knights from the field, but it's going to pick up the armigers. And depending on the build of knights that we're going into, that might be more critical, is being able to get the armigers off the field as fast as we can and just keeping Imperial Knights busy, especially with the fact of how they're fallback. Yes, they can shoot out of combat, but if we can tie them up to a point where they're not moving all over the field, that could be helpful. Lychguard can probably, I haven't seen it yet, but I have a good feeling that Lychguard could probably tie up a knight for some time, especially with the shields, or with Orican in there. You have that extra damage that the spears might be able to do it. I still like the sword and board with a 5-0 feel no pain off a Technomancer, but I can see both of them being able to protect and really, really throw with the knight and just hold him in place while picking away at damage. So those are some of the things I've been thinking about, because I've had some conversations with people and we've looked at stuff. I talked with people about the Doom Sight, the Nits damage, and it just seems like it's too expensive for the point cost. That's my opinion. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Looked into the Monolith, and I think the Monolith has some really interesting games, especially 2 Monolith, being able to put 1 in Deep Strike, 1 on the field, Deep Strike 1 in with heavy Death Rays. Death Rays have sustained shots, so it can put down more damage to really do damage to a single knight and play a network game. But a networking game where we can move things like Immortals with a Plasma Lancer up there and do this lethal damage as well. Maybe with Anakar in there for +1 to wound on some Gauze Blasters and put Volume of Fire into stuff. And I do think that has some play there as well, and could be a possibility. But I feel like we may not have as good of a drop zone as we would want to have for the Monolith that push our game too far in the back. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section with that one as well too. Doomsday Arc is good. Doomsday Arc can put down the Volume of Fire. The points are okay. You can run. The points are okay for it. Running 2 of them is solid. And there's the Gauze Flares that are able to do that extra damage onto infantry units, so for the non-Imperial Knight matchups. That's also a very nice one as well. I like the Locust Destroyers to kind of fill that role. I also like the Doomstalker coming in at 125 points, as I said again, right around my Technomancers or my Sovereign. Now I'm getting the threes to hit, and it's a scary enough gun to possibly proc the 4-up invuln. The Overwatch is really, really much better than I even anticipated it was going to be able to hit things and pick those things off. And yeah, its base size means that it's not as difficult to maneuver around than some other models. So I like that one. I do like the Doomstalker a little more into it. Heavy Destroyers, they're hitting for flat 6 damage. I mean, you look at a Knight player and go, look, I hit on 2s. Bam, 3 hits. One of them is a 6 that's automatically wound. I wrote a wound. Bam, I do wound all 3. There's 3 wounds going right in there because you need 3s to wound, 2s to hit. It's not unlikely that you're going to get 3 wounds on this thing, and a 6 might be a lethal hit on the first run through. And then the Knight player has a choice. Are they rotating the ion shields? If they already rotated on something else, now they're saving on 5s. 2 of them get through, bam, there's half the wounds gone on one squad for a Knight. Now you shoot the next one. And with the Doomstalkers still being there to be able to pick on and pick out wounds and stuff like that, Locust Destroyers being able to pick on and pick out those wounds, again, because the towering, you can see them, and be able to put those last wounds on there. Removing an entire Knight in a turn takes a lot of their damage off the table. They're able to come back, yes, but we've taken a lot of their damage off the table. So that's what I'm kind of looking at towards my gun line. I do have, like I said, Lich Guard in there just because they're a great tar pit with the sword and board, and they'd be able to move those and just move that big phalanx across the field of the squad of guys and just try and hold their own and just tar pit over an objective is part of my plan for this army. Again, the Reanimator to just draw threats, draw these attacks into one specific source and make weapons have to do damage to it is one of my things. Now, I get that some of the Knight weapons are probably just going to be able to pick up the Reanimator very easily, but at least that's a weapon that's firing at the Reanimator that may not be firing at something else. Now, over in the Eldar matchup, because I had my buddy Zach, who he's also prepping for Columbus as well too. Me, Lane, and Zach will be going to that event. Zach was saying, so what do you do against Eldar? I said, my response was, yeah, so Eldar, huh? Basically, I have the same answer I think most people do. I have no idea what you do against Eldar. The only thing I can think about doing against Eldar is trying to outplay the opponent. They're going to rely on the fate dice. So what we need to do is we need to try and present situations to make them burn the fate dice faster than they want to. And this is why I look at things like Doomstalkers in coming out of Strategic Reserve to be able to fire onto the Wraith Knight before it gets back and try and make them burn some of the fate dice on saves and stuff like that. Because if they have this whole bucket of fate dice here and their Wraith Knights are gone, and then they have nothing to spend the fate dice on, really, that really significantly lowers the output. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for with some of those things. Especially with the Wraith Knight and the mortal wounds that come off of that thing, for just being able to go, boom, that's a 6, that's a devastating wound. Take the devastating wounds. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to try and burn away the fate dice, just accept the fact that there's going to be a bad turn or two and try not to let them play it slowly. Try and make them have to react and make actions all over the place and burn through those dice real quickly. Hit dice generating units fast and hard and try and remove them. Do have a Veil in my list with the Locust, so being able to pick them up at the end of my opponent's turn and put them back down and remove some of those units is going to be critical. And because of the Locust being tougher, I'm not worried about taking an Overwatch from something like Eldar Guardians. So those are the big two in the meta. You know, we've seen that right now. We've seen that there is a lot there. I think that they are definitely the big two in the meta right now because we don't have, we weren't ready for it. We weren't ready for towering. It was like at the beginning of when we last did Index Hammer, one of the big runnings was an entire flyer wing of just storm ravens, and you either had Drago or Dante, and one of those two would run in the middle of your storm ravens and your storm talons and all that stuff, and you would just move them around the field, re-rolling hits, and that was it. And that was it. And it was whoever deployed first went first, and that was the list we built. And it was the beginning of it. Now this is the beginning of it. We see Imperial Knights and Eldar, some Wraith Knights really jump to the top. They're definitely a big threat. Our comparison is things like the Monolith. I don't think that running, I mean, now would you say running the Monolith in that sense would be just as strong? I don't necessarily think so, because the Knights have other things working for them inside of their army that for us, we have to take infantry to make the monoliths function. And that infantry is going to be kind of more of a burden for us to try and get around and try and force points to make those things do things, where the Knights don't necessarily need to as much. If anything, the Knights are trying to figure out what to do in the counter Knight matchup or the counter Imperial Eldar matchup. So we can kind of play off some of that it's like, okay, you may have some weapons that do 1 damage high targets to try to hit these things. So maybe soak that up by spreading everything out and spreading out the damage, but not so much that we're giving up free targets. So that's where I'm at, and those are my thought process. Guys, let me know in the comment section what you're thinking about, what some stories are with matchups, if you were able to have some success against Imperial Knights or Eldar, what you found worked really well, what maybe you would have done differently. Let's see what we can do and figure out here. This win rate with Necrons, we need to bring this up. We need to see this percentage get up there higher. And let's put some information on the community and try and get this Necron win rate back up there. You know, it's like the Necron codexes of old would say, we shall return. It's time for us to return to a scary part in the meta. We got a great book. We got some great rules. And apparently we're not as broken and overpowered as some people think with this, because, yeah, we don't have crazy, towering, mortal wound agents of destruction launching across the field. Guys, look forward to talking to you again real soon. Like I said, we do have a lot of stuff coming out here. I have a lot of projects work. I just need to get back from the jet lag. Still pretty beat up from that, and just give me a little time to get my body situated right, and we'll be talking to you again soon. Thanks for watching.